Colorado, like other states, has seen so many shootings involving known mentally ill persons who have sometimes exhibited warning signs but never really crossed the line that would allow involuntary mental health treatment. Almost 3 years ago, I approached sources who knew the parents of James Holmes, the convicted murderer in the mass shooting at the Aurora, Colorado Theater in 2012. Now, Holmes was judged competent to stand trial, but he was clearly mentally ill at the time of the killings. His parents had never sat together to be interviewed before. I told him this wasn't going to be a story about James Holmes, but about the challenge of how to identify mentally ill persons with access to firearms who could be potentially dangerous. Since the Aurora Theater murders, Bob and Arlene Holmes have worked quietly and very diligently on this issue and many others involving mental health. After months of conversations and correspondence, they agreed to participate, and their words were just heartbreaking. Do you blame yourselves for not knowing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're his parents.
We should have known if anybody would, so no, we didn't.
Yeah, we do. It's our fault for not being educated. If you're going to have a baby, you need to understand mental health, and you need to start looking for things and making sure that your kid has no mental health issues.
But I had to find a current incident that would bring this national issue into focus for viewers in our state who were looking for answers.
Did you not get that message?
Now, that case came on New Year's Eve 2017 when several sheriff's deputies were called to the apartment of Matthew Reel. He's a lawyer and Iraq veteran with a long history of mental illness. And when deputies determined that Reel was an imminent danger to himself and others in the complex, they tried to take him into custody.
Open the door! Sheriff's office!
One deputy was killed, 4 others wounded, along with 2 civilians in the apartment complex. In a later shootout with the SWAT team, Matthew Reel was also killed. After several weeks of making connections with sources who knew the family, I met with Susan Reel, Matthew's mother. She had previously refused to talk publicly about her son or the incident, but she agreed to talk with me. And she eventually gave us access to her son's mental health records that showed this ongoing descent into mental illness. Her story reflected the stories of so many families all over the country who have tried for years to get their loved ones some help.
He knew the law, and he never did anything to cross the line that would make it possible for us to get him help. In some sense, it was relief that at least this chapter was over.
As you're saying that, I can see that's a very hard thing for you to come to grips with, that you're actually relieved that your son died.
Well, my family thinks that I'm really horrible when I say that, but I'm not worried about him anymore. I know where he is, and I know that he's safe. He's finally safe. Even if he's dead, he's not suffering anymore. I mean, he wasn't the Matthew we knew after a certain point in time.
After our story aired, members of the Colorado legislature asked for a copy so they could show it in committee hearings to educate their colleagues on so-called red flag laws. Now, these are laws that allow families or law enforcement to petition a judge to force mental health treatment and temporary safekeeping of firearms. It was the sheriff of Douglas County, Colorado, Tony Spurlock, whose deputies were killed and wounded, who also explained the dilemma facing so many in law enforcement every day.
I don't blame the family. I mean, the family cooperated with us, and I think that they reached out to both Wyoming and to Lone Tree and to Douglas County and said, hey, these are the things that we know about our son, and their hands were tied as well.
Do you believe if you had a red flag law prior to this incident that both your deputy and Matthew Reel might be alive today?
I do, because I think if we had it, we would have taken him into custody when he was threatening the Lone Tree police sergeant. And if we didn't have it, we could have intervened then we could have done a lot of different things that we weren't allowed to do based upon the law.